Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Apologies for being late, you guys. I thought I'd try to squeeze in a fishing session just before the show, and you know how fishing goes. You pretty much time flies. Next thing I know, I look at my watch and it's 7:30, and as soon as I checked the time and I was ready to head back to get ready for the show this morning, I caught an enormous, I think it was about 15 or 20 pound striper, because they're just migrating up this way. And really, you got to catch these things when they migrate, because if you don't, you could just be fishing and wasting your time. So I was able to catch this 29-inch striper. It probably weighed about 15, almost 20 pounds. And I've got some video. I don't have video of the catch, but I have a video of having it back at the house here on top of the washer machine, which is where I just finished cleaning it, because you can't just let these fish sit. You've got to clean these fish very quickly, get them on ice, get them cold very quickly. So I got some video of the fish that I'll show you guys probably on Instagram. We'll probably upload that to Instagram for you guys, for those of you that follow the Instagram. We don't often upload on Instagram, but sometimes, every once in a while, there'll be something I'll upload over there, so check that out. Anyway, hope you guys are doing well, and today we're going to break down Enemy of the State. Now, for those of you that have been on this channel for a while, you will remember that we did screen this film, and we decoded it years ago. I can't remember exactly how it went down, but had a lot to do with Blind 11, of course, and I had to probably pull that video down to save the channel, because YouTube went through, of course, and was taking channels out left and right. We survived that barrage from YouTube, but in order to do that, I had to remove a lot of videos. Now, no videos will ever be lost again, though, because they're all backed up on ODYSEE. So if sometimes what I'll do is I'll pull a video here on YouTube, just because maybe it gets flagged, it's sitting just flagged, no one's approved it, and if it's up there for longer than 24 hours like that, usually I'll just pull it down, but it will always be up on ODYSEE, because ODYSEE basically copies this channel. Every single live show, every single upload gets copied over there. So for those of you that don't know that, you definitely want to click on the link in the description and subscribe to ODYSEE, just to make sure you don't miss anything. Now, I feel like every single one of the videos on this channel should go viral, but I think we've gotten to the point now. I have had someone tell me just today, how do I find all this stuff? And it's very, very suspicious. So basically what they're saying is we're too good. And I replied to them. I said, look, every single show I give credit to the Most High, His Son, the Holy Spirit for inspiration, and all of you guys, each and every one of you that send in this information to me. That's how we find it. So there isn't anything nefarious going on, and many of you have chimed in and said, hey, I was one person that sent something to Casey and he used it. So now you can be suspicious for being too good of a truther. That's a new one for me. Anyway, let's get into this decode here, because this is unbelievable. Now, from my memory, when we did this the first time, when we decoded this the first time, of course, we talked about Blind 11, which, as you will hear later in the film, is spoken. The birth date of Blind 11 is actually spoken, as one of these actors is discussing the surveillance police state. Now, this movie was pre-Blind 11, which makes it very, very creepy and cryptic. It was also pre-Patriot Act as well. But yet you're going to see all these references that seem to be pointing forward to what they knew they were going to do and enforce on our nation. So let me give you the backdrop of this film before we get into some of these scenes. Let me make sure we're connected. All right, looks like we got good sound. Everybody's starting to filter in. So Will Smith is actually in this film. And in fact, this film was one that one of you, I think it was Geo something, YouTube channel, asked me to take a look at this. Casey, you got to look at Enemy of the State, because there's umbrellas in it, and there's syringes, and all kinds of stuff. And so I'm glad that I looked at it. Now, let's get into some of this here and talk about this, the backdrop of this film. So Will Smith plays an attorney, and his wife is kind of like us. She's basically a truther. She talks about all these conspiracies and things that we often talk about the surveillance state and how that infringes on our privacy rights. Well, what happens is Will Smith unknowingly receives a videotape, and on the videotape, it is the murder of a congressman by the deep state. It takes place at like a duck pond, and they thought nobody was around, but in fact, some guy had a camera set up to watch birds that he picks up, kind of like a trail cam, and it picks up this murder. So the deep state goes after Will Smith in an attempt to destroy his credibility and his life. They cut off his credit cards and everything, and they try to make him look guilty. They try to pin another murder on him, and this keeps going on and on and on. So let's open this up and start to take a look at this montage that I put together. I'm glad everybody could make it to the show. Again, apologies for being late. I'll get that video of the fish on Instagram, so you guys can check that out after the show. Genesis Revelation was the one that wanted me to look at Enemy of the State again, so hats off to Genesis Revelation. I believe that was who asked me to do it. Now, let's go ahead and fire this up. This is crazy. Watch and listen very closely.
This bill is not the first step to the surveillance society. It is the surveillance society.
This bill isn't the first step in the surveillance society. It is the surveillance society. And you're going to hear them talk about this Privacy Act. And this has to be the Patriot Act. It just has to be. Before it ever was, I don't know if it was conceived yet. I don't know if the Patriot Act was being talked about before Blind 11. But this is crazy. 1998, you guys.
Telecommunications Security and Privacy Act. Invasion of privacy is more like it.
Here's the syringe in the neck. This is when they take out the congressman. And across the pond is a trail cam that picks up the murder.
Shows the death of Congressman Hammersley. The needle behind the ear. 3 faces readily identifiable.
The needle behind the ear. So they talk about, let me turn the sound down because it looked like you guys are getting blasted out over there. So that, of course, was Gene Hackman, very popular actor in the 80s and 90s and into the 2000s. And he's talking about how the congressman was killed, needle behind the ear. And here you see the umbrella. Now, the umbrella is front and center prominently. We talked about the umbrella and what this actually means. The umbrella is the syringe. They share the same parts. This is their metaphor for syringes and hypodermic needles. So whenever you see the umbrella like this, and typically that's what they're talking about. Let's keep watching here. Now, you saw the dog run across the umbrella. That has significance as well, as you'll see later, because it's all about rabies. Rabies injections. That's where all this is headed for the future of America. The zombie apocalypse. I don't know how it's going to happen, but this is where all the symbolism is pointing to. Going way back when. Now, as you're going to see very soon here, the characters in the film are going to begin to make the case that this act is necessary because of the danger of foreign nationals who hate America and the threat that they pose to America and to our country. Literally the playbook that we would watch unfold 3 years after this film was made. This was the case that they were making. And why do you think they're letting all these people in? It's to destabilize trust. That's exactly what it is used for. I was talking to someone the other day in California, and they said basically California has been overrun. It's been overrun. White people are now a minority in California. And so what do you think that's going to do politically? It will destabilize things. It has people angry at each other, blaming each other for things. And then you have the terrorist threat sprinkled in there with foreign nationals. And this is why they did it. The government did it. They allowed it so that they could destabilize trust and make you put all your trust in them. So the congressman is killed. He gets the needle behind the ear. And of course, that has to be the metaphor for the smack of the nation. And we saw the umbrella, the dog run across it. You're going to see a lot of dog cameos in this film, which of course mean rabies and zombies. So she walks into the shed, and this is where the umbrella is sitting, because she hears a sound or something, and it's Will Smith sneaking back into his own house because he has been tracked down. They can find him through satellite, helicopter, you name it, voice, sound. They're tracking him down. So the only thing he can do is pull all the trackers off of his body and sneak back into his house to find out why it is they're coming after him, because he doesn't know in the beginning. And then he figures it out. A guy basically who had the videotape of the murder, he got tracked down. They tried to kill him, and he's running for his life, and he runs into Will Smith just by accident in a lingerie shop. And he drops the tape into Will Smith's bag. Will Smith brings it home unknowingly, and that's when the chase is on to track down the enemy of the state, Will Smith. Let's keep watching here.
Georgie?
It's me.
Now, what I want you to notice about this umbrella is completely out of place in the script. There's no reason why this should be there. There's not raining outside. Okay? This is how you know what they're talking about in their symbolism. It's props. Props are very important. Prop masters, they're called.
Georgie?
It's me.
The needle behind the ear.
I got rabies or something. I can't do it. I can't do it.
Georgie?
It's me.
I got rabies or something. I got rabies or something. I got rabies.
Again, completely just does not fit within the context. Like, why would they write that in the script? Well, now we know. Now you know why the dog ran across the umbrella. Because the dogs have rabies. Now, what makes all this really super creepy is that what I just explained to you was exactly the conclusion that we came to within the last 2 years about what this was all going to be about. And we came to those conclusions by watching their symbolism in their films, watching their script. And that is that the smack scene, and maybe even the virus, if it exists, will be injected into the world and cause rabies-like symptoms. We're already seeing people going bald, hair coming out. These are rabies-like symptoms. So, going back in time to when this film was made, it appears as though we nailed it, doesn't it? Now, of course, there are many, many more clues. I'm just showing you the most obvious one.
The needle behind the ear. The needle behind the ear.
Now, there's a scene where Will Smith and Gene Hackman are running for their lives after Gene Hackman's hideout gets discovered and he blows it up. We'll get into that a little bit later, but they're run through a mining operation. But this is also a metaphor for something else, isn't it? Something that we just discovered in the last few months. Let me zoom in on this image here. And let me go into the chat and see who gets the answer first. Thanks everybody for showing up. I like to do question and answer and make this a little bit more interactive for you guys. It serves a few purposes. First of all, other people can see that I'm not just making all this up. And it also helps legitimize this work. Because if there's no legitimacy to this work and people think this is just pareidolia or finding things where things are not, then all this work is for nothing, isn't it? So what did I just show you on the screen? Chris Quinn got it right. Buzzsaw. And we were just talking about this, weren't we? The circular sawtooth. Now, this circular sawtooth is the central component in a machine called a willowing machine. What does willowing machine do? It processes the sheared wool from a sheep. In other words, it basically bald sheep, and this fits right into the rabies matrix, doesn't it? Losing of the hair. Well, the cutting and shearing of the sheep is symbolism for cutting off your connection to God. They want you to look at it. That's why the helicopter flew right in front of it. Now, this shape was prominent. This very same sawtooth, circular sawtooth shape was prominent on the Guinness clock above the umbrella and the syringe in this image here at the 1951 London Fair. Umbrella. There's the circular sawtooth of a willowing machine, which you're looking at on your screen right now. Now these are fibers from something else, a plant, but the willowing machines are used also for wool as well. Also for cotton. Now, of course, Will Smith's daughter, who shears her head, and her mother, who shears her head, his daughter's name is Willow. Are you starting to see the fabric of this reality, the fabric of the Matrix, revealing itself on a spiritual level? Of course, one of you, once again, look at the sawtooth sun. Unbelievable. Something is happening here, isn't it? This is modern artwork on a bus terminal that one of you found. And there is the syringe and an umbrella, proving that we're not all crazy. We don't all have pareidolia. We don't all just make things up because it sounds great and sounds cool. Now here's a wide angle view of this Guinness clock, again from 1951, and all in one line. You see the sawtooth sun. This isn't a regular sun. These are all pointing in the same direction, aren't they? And the umbrella and what appears to be a syringe-like object in the bottom. Now, I know that's not really a syringe, but symbolically and spiritually, it is a syringe, as I just demonstrated to you, because umbrellas are syringes. They both have the same parts, which is the main part is a ferrule, the tip of the umbrella, and a piece inside of a hypodermic needle. Let's keep watching here. Now this woman is willowing wool. She's doing it by hand. This is how they originally started doing it. And then they realized that they could just put this thing on a cylinder and run it through a machine.
He is talking about ending personal privacy.
So she's like us. She ends up being right, but the damage has already been done, you guys. They've discredited people like us for seeing into the future of what these people are planning to do. And by the time we get to the future that we already knew was going to happen, it's already too late. And they still find a way to make us look crazy. We are already in a police state. Far worse than things were in the 80s. The higher, the more that the technology advances, the more security controls that they have, the more surveillance they're able to do, the more processing power, the more cameras. You guys, I grew up in a society where there were no cameras. The 80s, the only places that had cameras were banks, and that was inside. Nobody really had a camera outside in the 80s when I grew up, and yet here we are, and they're everywhere. Now, this next part, you're going to hear Will Smith make the argument for the elite, the very argument that they're trying to convince everybody. Will Smith makes the argument that people should have no problem being listened to if they aren't doing anything wrong, right? I've heard my mom use this argument before. She's like, Casey, why do you care if they're listening? You're not a teeterist. You're not going to go blow anything up. I go, Mom, you don't understand. The problem with that is we've already seen it happen in China. It's happening right now. You don't have to be a teeterist to get in trouble. These people have nothing better to do than to write tickets and citations and show up to your door and harass you. Take your children if they can. It's the unfair laws. And, you know, as it sits now, most laws are unenforceable or very rarely enforced. But once they have 100% efficiency at being able to enforce those laws, they don't need patrol cars anymore, do they? They go right to the crime, or right to what they call a crime, what they've deemed a crime. 100% policing efficiency. 100%. There is no more patrolling because the cameras and algorithms are doing that for them. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but over the last several decades, more and more unfair laws are becoming more and more common, aren't they? And then here's the other problem. As soon as their electric kingdom and their surveillance state is in place, guess what? They can make any law they want to now and enforce it 100%, and you won't even be able to object to it. You won't be able to say there's an unfair election. They'll call that disinfo, and they'll come to your house and tell you you can't say that. That's against the law. They'll make a law saying that you can't say disinformation. You see where all this is headed? And then there's no way out of it because guess what? You're under surveillance state. You can't even break these laws anymore if you wanted to. You can't even get out of it. You basically have to comply or you lose your freedom and you lose your money. So anytime someone tells you, if you're not doing anything wrong, what's the problem? You tell them exactly what I just told you. And that's when it will begin to sink in. And you tell them how things have already progressed. Let me give you a simple example. Look what radar, police, highway patrol radar has done to catching speeders, right? Now, this is just one example. Growing up in the 70s and, or born in the 70s, but people that grew up in the 60s and 50s remember a time where there wasn't radar. So cops didn't just sit on the side of the road to catch speeders. And if they did, they only caught people going super, super fast that they could prove were speeding because they didn't have radar. And so now we've got a situation where cops will just sit and pick people off going 5 miles over the speed limit. That's an example of how technology has increased infractions and made it so that you can't do this or that, X or Y. Do you see the problem here? And this spills over into everything. Jaywalking. A camera catches you, and this is exactly what's happening in China right now. A camera catches you jaywalking, goes against your social credit score. And I could sit here for hours and list examples of how things have changed. And it's only going to get worse. We're at the beginning of something. We're actually about a quarter in the way through it. But it's only going to get worse. And next thing you know, you're going to be living in a place where if you walk out your door, because the average citizen breaks multiple laws every single day, it's just there's no one around to enforce it. But when we get to a day where you can't even walk outside of your door without thinking conscientiously about what you're going to do and make sure you don't break a law, that's when all of this will settle in and sink in. This is when you'll wish that you had stood up and said something. Not that it matters anymore, because I believe that all voting is fake anyway now. So even if you tried to vote for someone that you thought wasn't going to push this, it's already too late, you guys. They put in place who they want to be put in place. Look what happened in France. You guys, it was 2 years ago. The yellow vests, there were people in the streets opposed to Macron. Like 90% of people don't even like him. Not that Le Pen's any better, because again, they give us two choices that they know that they can control. That's who gets to get the chance to be elected, is people that they already have control over. But look at what happened there. Nobody likes him, you guys. How did he just win an election? We all know how he won. We all know how he won. People were not happy with being forced to have their businesses closed. Nobody liked him, and he still won. So, surveillance state is no good for anybody. I'd rather go it alone and protect my own property. Because the state can target anybody they want to for arrest. Especially people who they either don't want to come to power, or people that gain any kind of influence, or people that go against the national agenda that they have in store for the future. Let's say, for instance, I love my gas stove. I don't want to go to an electric stove. So I'm going to speak out about that. I'm going to say, you know what, you guys? No, don't give up your gas stoves. Well, what if I started gaining some traction? And all of a sudden, millions and millions of people sided with me. Well, what do you think the police state, surveillance state would do? They would find some dirt on me and shut me down, wouldn't they? So now you're seeing the problem. Now listen to this part.
Do you want your phone tapped?
I'm not planning on blowing up the country.
And freedom have always existed in a very precarious balance. And when buildings start blowing up, people's priorities...
When buildings start blowing up? Are you kidding me? Which is exactly what happened 3 years later.
...tend to change.
Reynolds Thomas Bryan, born 9/11/40.
What?
Reynolds Thomas Bryan, born 9/11/40.
Blind 11/40. Look at his transfer date. That's the first day of Lupercalia. Remember I told you the two are interconnected? Lupercalia, the Wolf Festival, Ancient Roman Festival, Pagan Festival, and Blind 11. They're interconnected.
Physical School, D.C., BA, Harvard, PhD, Princeton.
And when buildings start blowing up, and when buildings start blowing up, and when buildings start blowing up...
Then they show the hideout, Gene Hackman's hideout, falling into its own footprint after it was rigged with explosives. Because that's what burning buildings do, don't they? They fall inside their own footprint. Actually, they really don't. But this is what they're planting the seeds to accept what was going to happen. They usually fall sideways, because to fall in their own footprint, you would have to remove all the material and all the supports evenly and time it perfectly from the top of the building to the bottom of the building to make it fall in its own footprint.
What was happening?
Or you'd have to turn it to dust with some kind of weapon.
Blew up the building. Why? Because you made a phone call.
Let's back up here.
I blew up the building. Why? Because you made a phone call.
He goes, what's happening? He goes, I blew up the building. He's like, why? Because you made a phone call. Now let me break that down for you. Why would they say it's because he made a phone call? Well, we know what the script says. Will Smith stopped at a convenience store, and Will Smith wanted to contact his family, and he got on the payphone, and they were able to track him down and track them back to the hideout. Well, let me postulate a different story than the cover story that we're given here. It wasn't explosives at all that took down the building. It was actually a copper device. Tesla technology. Now, he's going to explain later that there was copper inside the building. Copper wire. Now, we know that telephone lines are copper, so he's basically giving away the true weapon that probably brought down the buildings. A copper device, as we had discovered 7 years ago. Now, before we finish this decode, one of you looked up some calendar dates surrounding some of the recent films that we've been decoding, and you began to notice patterns. Patterns that we're going to talk about right now. This is Omega Man, the movie. And Will Smith was in a movie called I Am Legend, which was the prequel. I'm sorry, Omega Man was the prequel to I Am Legend. Same exact plot. Will Smith is Charlton Heston. Okay? Now watch this. Looked at the release dates of these films. And what you have is, actually, I didn't look at this. Someone sent this to me. Gotta be clear here. There are 10,999 days before Blind 11 would happen that Omega Man was released. Now, what does this mean? Well, if you count the day and include the date of the calculation, then it's actually exactly 11,000 days. The odds of that happening are very slim to have the exact amount of days like that. You could also look at this 999 as a 666. Now, you might not accept that synchronicity and that coincidence, but this one will be more alarming and shocking. Charlton Heston died 3 months and 22 days before I Am Legend released. 3 months and 22 days before I Am Legend released. The very film that would be the sequel to the Charlton Heston film. Was this some kind of sacrifice? I don't know. He was old. 3 months, 22 days, 113 days. Now you're going to see this number 322 on Will Smith's watch. Will Smith wears 2 watches in the film. He wears a Casio and an Omega. Omega Man. So, it's 322 every time, isn't it? And this demonstrates some kind of order, doesn't it? Yes, it does. It demonstrates some kind of order. Now, here's another one. 33 months and 22 days between Enemy of the State and its release and Blind 11. Another 322. So now you're beginning to see this hidden framework, the order, the continuity to these films and events. I call it the Matrix because that's what it is. Now let's finish up this decode here because there's even more. If you're shocked now, it goes even deeper. Now we're going to back up a bit to this scene. And you see on the bottom of your screen it says telephone, internet, Blind 11, and Patriot Act. And what does all that mean? Well, you're probably asking, how is this surveillance state going to finally happen in its full form? Well, the only way it can happen is with an electric kingdom. Now, another revelation we've been talking about at length is this electric kingdom. And it was born out of the air. What do you mean, Casey? Well, I'm going to show you. The electric kingdom was born out of the air. The ruler of the air, of course, is Satan. So before you think I've gone mad, let me explain. What you're looking at on your screen are air tubes. They were called pneumatic tubes. And these were the original arteries of communication. These were the very first networks. Air tubes, pneumatic tubes. And these were in the basements of many, many buildings. In fact, one of the main air tube, pneumatic tube hubs was in the basement of 40 Wall Street, which is the building that Thump owns. Now, that particular building has been viewed and seen in many, many films. They've showed this basement with the pneumatic tubes and a vault down there. And they would use these tubes to send money around near Wall Street. There was also one of these pneumatic tube systems underneath Paris as well. Look at these. Look at this. Look at the scope of this. These were the first networks. Now, these air tubes, as I said, were used to move money around, letters, but mostly it was about trade. It was about money. It was about moving money around quickly and efficiently and safely. Right? And these very same tubes would be the tubes that underground copper telephone lines would be run through. The pathway was already set. They simply pushed the line through these tubes. And then a generation later, they started pushing coaxial cables for cable and internet through these very same pathways. Then fiber optic lines. He shall transform himself into an angel of light. From ruler of the air, to the light, the fiber optic cable lines. Prophecy is being fulfilled. So now you see how the airwaves are really the deception. Airwaves and light waves are the deception, coming straight from the devil. Now, as soon as these networks were in place, the world was finally ready for the electric kingdom, which is the final cage. It will be our final prison. Now, this plan has been going on for a very, very long time, because what you're going to see next is proof that Bush was a key figure in all of this. Watch.
What the hell is happening? I blew up the building. Why? Because you made a phone call.
Now, we made this discovery probably 3 years ago. I'm showing you again a lot of new people on the channel. George Bush was born on the exact day and year that the center trade of the world was born. July 6th, 1946 was the day that Dewey, the governor, picks the board for the trade center. This was the infancy of it. Now, what are the odds of that? That he would share a birthday with the very place that would blow up under his presidency. How many years later? 1946 to, I guess that would be how old he is, right? I think the odds are probably 1,000,000,000 to 1. Unless there's some other plan behind all this, right? Now, Rockefeller was at the root of this plan for the center. And look at this. In the 1950s, David Rockefeller began floating the idea of a downtown World Trade Center. It would help revive the area's fortunes in an era when many companies were relocating to Midtown, as well as give a new home to the New York Stock Exchange. In theory, the complex was to be built on the East River near the Fulton Fish Market, which would not have affected Radio Row. As the WTC project was getting off the ground, Rockefeller created a new newspaper, the Downtown Courier, as a PR mouthpiece for the development. In 1959, the paper praised Radio Row, which it recast as, you ready? Electronic City. Now, for those of you that have been following the channel closely and watching all the daily shows, you're probably getting chills right now, because we had just recoined the term Electric Kingdom within the last 4 or 5 months, haven't we? We did probably 5 shows on the Electric Kingdom, because we realized this is where everything was headed. They're trying to do away with natural gas. They're now demonizing natural gas. Natural gas used to be hailed as a clean energy, and now all of a sudden it's not so clean. They want everybody on the electric grid, electric stoves, electric this, electric that, electric heat, electric everything, so that they can simply turn it off and on when they want. They could set prices wherever they want and enslave you through your use of electricity. And make no mistake, by the end of all this, they will be determining how much electricity you get based on your social credit score. Never ever let a government centralize your energy into one place like that. That's basically shooting yourself in the foot. Now, how is this electric city concept appearing in this completely separate research that we were doing about the origins of the Center for Trade of the World. And I'm scrambling the way I say that because you're not allowed to say those 3 words in a row like that. You get flagged. It's already happening, you guys. We're already in a surveillance state. If I can't speak freely, but then you go to the mainstream news channels and they can speak freely and without getting canceled, that we're already here. It's just that right now they're focusing on people that have an audience. Pretty soon it's going to be every single person. Let's keep going. Now, the document you're looking at now is a document that I dug up from the original legislation from Bush's birthday and the establishment of the Center of the World of the Trade. And when I read through this document, my head almost exploded when I read what I'm about to show you next. Because what the document appears to say and disclose in 1946 is that the Center for Trade of America, the one that went up in flames, was fashioned after what's called a sample fare. And not just any sample fare, a particular sample fare. The document names it Leipzig. That was created by the Yazis. And it even says and mentions in this document the REICH. The document compares the TC, the WTC, to these fares, and it mentions the government of the REIC to the H and the Leipzig Fair. Now, this is shocking because what it suggests is that the very foundation of trade in this country was fashioned after what everybody's been trying to tell us all along. Remember Project Paperclip? Why would you bring people over from there? Why would you bring Yazis from there and put them in NASA and put them in our government and in our science, in our labs, in our pharmaceutical companies? Why would you do that? Well, this gives us another piece to the puzzle, doesn't it? Let's keep watching here. Now, of course, I'll link all these papers and everything so you guys can see this. So, I'm not making it up. Actually, you can see here, if you want to look this one up, I don't know if I kept the link to that, but just type in first report of the NYS legislature.pdf, and it should, here's the link here in case you want to, anthonywrobbins.com, because I don't think I did save this one, but you can type that in and find this very easily, okay? Now, let's keep watching here, because they're going to mention the privacy bill again, and you're going to see the name Patriot on the ferry, obviously referencing the Patriot Act.
That this bill will in the end provide the kind of security that this...
What security? The kind of security he's going to need.
Does this mean the privacy bill is dead, Congressman?
In its current form, yes, but the...
Does this mean the privacy bill is dead, Congressman?
In its current form, yes, but the issue is still very much alive, I can assure you.
Privacy bill, privacy bill, privacy bill.
Obviously, they're talking about the Patriot Act. They were already drafting it. They already knew they were going to draft it because they already knew what they were going to do that would get them to be able to sign and get everyone to accept the Patriot Act. So let's get back to Gene Hackman's hideout before he blew it up. And you're going to hear him talk about telecommunications control. And we get more clues about the Patriot Act that would change America forever. Watch.
Told you, Bobby. I told you they had this type of capability. And that goddamn privacy bill is just another way for them to expand the power.
And get into your bank statements, computer files, email, listen to your phone calls. See, the government's been in bed with the entire telecommunications industry since the 40s. They've infected everything.
My wife's been saying that for years.
Every wire, every airwave. The more technology you use, the easier it is for them to keep tabs on you.
Tens of millions of foreign nationals living within our borders, and many of these people consider the United States their enemy, and they see acts.
Oh, you shouldn't have. This thing must have cost $12, $13. Oh, you shouldn't have. This thing must have...
There you go. 322. Now, remember the calendar dates that I just showed you earlier in the show. How the 322 kept showing up over and over again between the dates of these films and the major event, Blind 11, as well as the death of some of these actors, release dates of these films. This particular watch he's holding is a Casio. But at the end, he actually has two watches. This is like his active watch, and then his more formal watch is an Omega. And you'll hear them say that here in the script here.
Cost $12, $13 easy.
It's completely secure. Copper wire mesh keeps the radio signals out.
So this is Gene Hackman and Will Smith at Gene Hackman's hideout before it got blown up. Talks about a copper mesh keeping the signal out. And this is the clue. The clue about some kind of electronic device that would bring down the building before it imploded. Copper wire mesh. Now, this could also be a clue about the coming electric kingdom, because we are now surrounded by copper mesh, aren't we? These Jive Gee Whiz base stations are full of copper. And this is why we saw copper coin shortages in our country, because they tapped into the coins, which I believe these copper was put into the coins to create basically a storage mechanism that they could later tap into. Because copper coins did not used to be filled with copper. This was a modern development where they started putting copper in the core of every coin. Now you can look that up. I'm not going to argue with people about that, because it's right there. They show you. You could just type it in, Google it, and it shows you the history of coins, what they used to be made of in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, and then how they started putting copper cores in all the coins. Every single coin has a copper core in it. They're like 60, 70, 80% copper in the middle. And then they coat it with like nickel. The penny has the least amount of copper. It's only 2 to 3% copper, and it's just because it's a coating. So they reversed everything. So it makes it look like the pennies are copper because they look copper, but they're really the least amount of copper of all the coins. So what's the best way to store precious metal that you're going to need in the future? Knowing you're going to build an electric kingdom 40, 50 years from now. You hide it in something of value. Why do you think they took the copper out of the pennies? Because people throw pennies away. And they didn't want the pennies going right back into the earth. Do you see what's happening here now? It's an entire plan that these people had. So they took the copper out of the pennies. They're like, people throw those away. Let's store it in nickels, dimes, and quarters, because people don't throw those away. And then when we're ready to gather up all this copper, we'll just pull it out of circulation. And that's exactly what they did. Melted it down, and they're using it for these base stations. 60,000 base stations they're going to need. Now, some of these base stations are a simple cabinet, an inconspicuous cabinet, sitting down on the street level. Some of the base stations are much more extensive, whole buildings, where these Jive G base stations are. Let's keep going with this. We're almost done with this, you guys. I'm glad you guys could all show up to this. This is a very important show. So, How does that fit into some kind of weapon? Well, I don't know exactly how this weapon was created or exactly how it works, but somehow they've been able to use copper to turn things into dust. Dustification. Now, Gene Hackman calls his little hideout here that's surrounded by copper, he calls it a jar. A jar. Weird, right? Why would you call something wrapped in copper a jar? Well, it's because a jar is like a looking glass. A jar is what you put people inside, or things or animals or insects, so you can look at them and you can see them from all angles. So really, this is twofold. It's the surveillance state, the copper mesh, and probably a weapon. Now, let's keep watching here.
This is where I work. It seems strange to you, but this has been my office for 15 years.
Now this guy, this was the first guy who accidentally recorded the murder with his trail cam, looking at birds, right? And here you're going to hear in the background them talking about the future of electric cars. Now remember, this was 1998. I think we only had a couple electric cars on the market. Everybody hated them. Again, another very weird thing to include in a script that has absolutely nothing to do with electric cars, unless you know how to decrypt the true meaning of it.
The electric car is here.
A sedan for you.
What kind of watch is that?
Did you represent Mr. Zavitaz?
It's an Omega.
A sedan for you.
What kind of watch is that?
Did you represent Mr. Zavitaz?
It's an Omega.
Of course, Will Smith is the Omega Man. Look in the background. That looks like a spike of protein, doesn't it? I can't really see. It's kind of fuzzy. But we've seen, I'm to the point now where I can see these things out of the corner of my eye, popping up in the Matrix. So, Omega Man confirmed. So the enemy of the state is us, right? Anybody who stands in the way of their agenda. What's their agenda? A worldwide cashless society, trackable currency, debt slavery, and they will just begin to target those people with low tax-based properties, or who are living off the grid, or who have any kind of influence in people listening to them that are against the current system. You will become enemies of the state. I will become an enemy of the state. I probably already am. It's only a matter of time before I become a targeted individual on a real physical level, where they start shutting down bank accounts. They're already doing it to a lot of people, you guys. We've been able to kind of escape it for the most part, but there will come a time where they will make it impossible for me to speak to you. They will target people that are not deceived by voting in the whole voting process. They don't want people telling you that voting isn't real. Why do they do voting? Well, voting tracks sentiment, doesn't it? It tracks how well their programming is working. This is why they even have voting. It's not because they need our consent. It's because they want to track how well they're doing. How well is their Hollywood programming working? How well is their right-left paradigm working? Well, voting tells them how well it's working. They're going to also target anybody who wants to live outside their electric kingdom. You will become a threat, because that kind of thinking can catch fire, and it can get others to wake up. And when others begin to wake up, that's when the controllers lose their control, isn't it? Now, tomorrow we'll go ahead and get caught up on another Between the Headlines show. It's been a while since we've done one. The news has been very quiet lately. And so when it does that, well, then we tend to focus on some of these decodes and stuff instead of the headline. But people ask me, why do we have to decode this stuff, Casey? Why do we have to do this every day? Well, it's because the people that don't understand this stuff, they are the ones who become the unwilling participants in the construction of our own prison. We have to do this, you guys. We don't have any other choice. Because the minute we stop, then we will be overtaken and overrun. There will be no dissenting voices. And the rest of society will continue to manufacture, create, and build our own prison and our own future. So if you see the writing on the wall, you have to say something. And when you wake up to this stuff, things start to happen. You stop voting. You start participating in the very machine that is building your future enslavement. And this is what they don't want. But this is why we have to do this. When you wake up, you begin to see the carefully crafted deception clearly. And you just simply opt out. That's what I've done. As much as to the degree as that you can, right? Not everybody can completely opt out, but there are things that we do every single day in our buying choices, and whether or not we go to a poll, whether or not we spend energy getting behind a candidate, we just opt out. We're in the world, but we're not part of it, which is what the Bible says we're supposed to be. And that's when God can start working with you and through you and start blessing your life. When you've pulled the plug on all the evil that is being perpetrated, and you are no longer significantly, contributing to that evil, that's when spiritually God can work with you. How can God work with you if you continue to work against him by voting for a man? You can't, can you? And he can't. Now I'm going to leave you with this, and this is probably one of the most important parts of the show. So if you're still with me, this is shocking. Enemy of state. EOS. Who was EOS? She was the goddess of the dawn. The morning star. Aurora. Sister of Helios. Sister of Apollo. Now, Eos had rosy-colored fingers. Look at this. She goes by many names. Aphrodite. Morning star is mentioned in here. Let me find that. Morning star. Aphrodite, Inanna, Ishtar. They call her all these things. All one and the same. In fact, Artemis ties into Eos as well. We were just talking about Artemis, weren't we? A whole lot. Eos, enemy of state. Is this where the term enemy of the state came from? I don't know. But this is interesting, isn't it? Now, how does Artemis fit into this? Well, Artemis killed Eos's lover, Orion. As you can see right here. So, interesting nonetheless. These people worship ancient Roman gods. We've demonstrated it with Apollo. We've demonstrated it with Artemis in the space program. We've demonstrated it time and time again that this is what they follow. They follow the ancient Roman calendar. They follow these ancient gods. We have Sol Invictus, which is our Statue of Liberty. SOL, Statue of Liberty. Sol Invictus. Mithra. And it just keeps going. Why would we believe in a system like that is pagan and it directly opposed to God? Now, if we were finding real roots of our country and how it was created and how it was fabricated, if we were finding roots in real Christianity, then we wouldn't even be doing a show on this, would we? If there was real Christian references, let's say, okay, let me give you an example. Let's say that instead of the Statue of Liberty, there was a giant, well, let's say there was no statue. Because the people said, you know what, we don't need a graven image because the Bible says we're not supposed to have a graven image. So America doesn't have any statues. Let's say that, right? Do you see the difference? And people keep wanting to say, oh, America is a Christian country. No, we're not. We're a pagan country. We're a pagan because all of our holidays are from the ancient pagan calendar. Not the holy days, they're holidays from the ancient Roman pagan calendar. We make graven images and statues all over the country. When will we wake up? I don't know. Most people won't. The Bible says the gate is narrow. And you know what? There was a time on this channel where I believed that we could help widen that gate. Some. I thought, man, if millions of people could see these videos, the gate might be widened just a little bit. Not that I was trying to rewrite Bible prophecy, but I just thought, I go, God, well, maybe it's because there wasn't somebody who cared enough. We care. And maybe we can widen that gate. But as the days go on, I begin to see that there is no changing that prophecy. It is what it is. The reason why the gate is so wide is because people have ego. Because people have pride. They don't want to admit that what they've been worshiping all this time is pagan. They don't want to admit that they believe in a country that is about greed and lust and all of the things God hates. They don't want to believe that they see strength in cocky attitudes and how quickly somebody can tell somebody off. And we vote for these people. We vote for these people. And so there's my rant for today, you guys. I'm a little pumped up today because it's just, oh man, it's just crazy, you guys. Okay, I'm going to get this video up on Instagram for you guys. It's just a short little clip of the fish. For those of you that don't like fish, I don't hurt the fish in the video, but it's just the fish laying on top of the washer machine. And I'll show that to you on Instagram. Anyway, I love you guys. Let's see if do you guys want to have any kind of discussion? Let's see what's going on here. I haven't even really gone into the chat. The denial is very strong. Yes, Niall. Absolutely. The denial is so strong, and we've been indoctrinated with the denial. We've been indoctrinated with it, haven't we? Chats Frats talks about the Pharaoh. Yes. Man. You know, humility is seen as weakness now. It's just really seen as weakness. And that it's sad. But you know what the Bible says? It says the least of us will be the greatest, and the greatest will be the least in God's new order. So I'm looking forward to that day, because there's a lot of us that will be the greatest, because we basically put our humility first, don't we? In this reality, even when we're slapped in our face and beat down and pushed to the bottom, we still lead with humility and love, trying to mirror what Christ taught us. And so we'll never give in to these people and return evil for evil, because that's what they want us to do, isn't it? They want us to return evil for evil so that we're in the wide gate with them, the gate leading to destruction. All right. Now, some people could say, "Hey, Casey, well, they are taking down a bunch of these statues." Well, I guess they kind of are, aren't they? But for all the wrong reasons. For all the wrong reasons. They should have started with the Statue of Liberty. Take that one down first. The largest graven image lie in America. Because it is a lie. It's not the Statue of Liberty. It's a statue of slavery. Made out of copper, the blue blood. It's basically a middle finger pointed to heaven, is what it is. And there's other things I can say about it, the Statue of Liberty, but I can't. But you guys know. So, and I'm going to leave you with this. When you think about a leader, someone to lead this country, from a biblical perspective, wouldn't it be like someone like the way Jesus behaved, or like the prophets behaved? Did prophets ever go in and go, "I'm really cool. I make lots of money. I'm cool," very bigly? No, they don't. They have the utmost humility. And with one wrong word, they could be struck down. Or one time of taking credit for what God was doing, and trying to reveal, they could be struck down or punished. And here we live in a world where Christians vote for people who are about the furthest thing you could be from a prophet or the way Jesus behaved. We're in backwards world, you guys. We're in backwards world. Now, I'm not even sure someone with that kind of disposition could even rule this country, because it is not within man to direct his own steps. The Bible says this. We're not meant to lead ourselves. Our King is in heaven. Anyway, I love you guys. I hope you have a great day. Take care and be safe, everybody.